Hi there, my name's Andy Young and I'm one of the automotive lecturers down at Unitec in Auckland, New Zealand, and welcome to my Andy Mechanic YouTube channel. Now, in this short video I'm going to run through how to work out how much force basically a valve spring applies to keeping a valve closed and the sealing area sealed, basically. The weaker the valve is, then the more likely you are to get valve bounce as RPM increases. That's why race cars and stuff have really strong valve springs to snap those valves shut. So depending on the manufacturer, they'll give you different kinds of specifications. Some manufacturers will give you a graph to work from, and when you have a graph, then you just look at you've measured up the installed height, and the previous video covers how to calculate that, and it tells you at that installed height you should get this much pressure keeping your valve closed. Now, on this Rav4, looking through the workshop manual, it tells me here that, or the only specification it gives me, is that at a length of 34.7 millimeters, we should get a closure force of 19.5 kilograms, which basically means that to squash that spring to a length of 34.7 millimeters requires a force of 19.5 kilograms. And can I do that with my hand? Well, probably can actually. I've got quite strong hands. Used to anyway. Okay, but there are different ways of working this out. In the past, I've used a fish balance or fish scales. You know, one of those, not fish scales, as in fishy scales, but as in a fish scale, a measuring device for the weight of fish. And I think we used a washer, and we put a washer on the end, and then we held this bit in the vise loosely, and we were able to pull it with the fish scales, measure the length, get the length right, and then read off the scales what the force was. And that was a really rudimentary way of doing it, but it did work. However, I've stolen a really special, very old tool from Unitec just for a day, and they will get it back. They're very cautious about me taking this off premises, but we have here, oh god, it's a bit heavy, a very old, non-digital, made by, I've got to get this in the picture because it probably won't last forever. Made by, here you go, look at that. It's a model 3600 made by Repco. And how old is that logo? Look at that. Come down here and I'll show you how it works. Okay, so a bit of hands-free going on. Not often I do that. So there you go, that's your little logo. And this essentially is a bit like a scales. And you can zero the scale there, look. And the bottom of, or this bottom plate here, is the scale. So if I push down on there, you can see it records the weight or the force that I'm applying. And we're going to be using the red scale, the kilogram scale. But then we can also move this lever and open up this top pressure plate. And basically we're going to be putting the spring in there, and we're going to be making it a set length or a set distance between these two plates. And the distance that we need to do for this particular engine to measure that spring's performance is 34.7 mil. Now you might ask me, hey Andy, how do we know it's 34.7 mil? Well, there's also another little scale at the back, and again it's in imperial, that's inches, no idea what that is. And we've got the red scale, which is metric, and you can see this little tiny hairline here, which is the datum. So all we have to do is, as I move that lever around, it tells us the distance between those two anvils. Okay, so first job is to calibrate the weight scale here, and then we'll open up the anvils, and we're going to stick the spring in there. Now on that rear gauge here, the anvil distance gauge, we can call that, I'm going to take that down to 34.7 millimeters. So there's 35, 34.7. It's not the world's most accurate device, to be honest. And we should be getting a weight, a pressure being applied by that spring onto the base plate of 19.5 kilograms. Oh dear. Well, looking at the scale, there's 10 kilograms and there's 20, and we've got 5 increments, so each one of these is worth 2 kilograms. We're on 12 kilograms. Well, that's a pretty major fail, isn't it? That spring should be applying 19.5 kilograms of force to the valve head to keep it closed when it's at that length, and it's only providing 12 kilograms. That's probably about 60% at a guess. A major fail. Okay, well, that was the more technical but a bit vague way of measuring how much force a valve spring is applying to the valve head to keep it closed. And in the Toyota manual, it just gave us a single force at a set length, which is 34.7 mil. In other manuals that I've seen, you get a graph. So you can look at the installed height, and whatever your installed height is, it will tell you what the force should be. Yeah, manufacturers do things differently. Okay, well, if you remember back onto one of the previous videos, this valve spring also failed because it's not square. Yes, I know it's round, but if you watch the video, you'll know what I mean. It's also failed because it doesn't provide enough force. Now, the reason why it doesn't provide enough force is because it's tired. That's a 1996 Rav4. It's now 2016. That's 20 years this valve spring has been moving up and down, trying to close that valve. That's quite a long time. Also, there's a possibility, although I'm not entirely sure, but looking at the exhaust valve stem seals, which are rock hard, there is an indication this engine's got a bit warm in the past, although the head is not warped. I mean, there's been no problems with overheating whilst we've had it. But if the engine has overheated, then that can draw the temper of these valve springs and it can weaken them. And that could be what's happened, or a contributory factor anyway. So whatever happens, this engine's going to have to get new valves and new valve springs. Golly. Okay, well, that's how you work out how much force the valve spring is applying to the valve head, using a special tool to do that. And I don't own this. This belongs to Unitech, and they're going to want it back. And the problem is, most of you out there aren't going to have one of those, and in all honesty, you don't need one. You can make up a very basic contraption using a fish scales, fish weighing scales. That's the thing that you hold, that has a ring at the top, and it has a little rudimentary spring scale inside and a hook at the end. And I've rigged up one of those a few times in the past, where you have a washer on the end of your spring, and then a bit of wire that runs down the middle of the spring, and then this end of the spring we would sit against the side of the vise, pull on the fish balance until we got the spring to the correct length, in this case 34.7 mil, and then we'd read off the scales in kilograms how much force we were applying to that spring to get it to that length. And that's exactly the same thing as what that really complicated machine's doing. Sure, it's a bit more fiddly and you've got to play around a bit, but I suppose the bottom line is, as soon as you've got one spring in the whole set that's failed, you don't really need to measure anymore, do you? Because you're going to buy a set of valve springs. You're not just going to put one or two in there. That would be really crazy, to be honest. Okay, so there you go. Any questions or comments, then do leave them down the bottom. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, then please do join the masses that are subscribers to the channel these days. I don't know. But don't forget, if you do subscribe, do click on the little gear icon and make sure you receive all notifications. And that way you'll get emails or whatever it is, whatever you choose, what format you choose for your notifications, will come through whenever new videos are uploaded. And, well, that's it. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Over and out.